Innovation comes out of crisis, and it comes out of uncertainty, and it takes courage. I use the story of Forrest Mars. Back in the 1930s, Forrest Mars was the heir of the Mars Chocolate Company, and his father had kind of just kicked him out, and so he had to leave the company. They did not get along so well, and so he's out of a job. He's pretty young, and he's very innovative. He's trying to figure out, what can I do to, kind of get back on my feet? And so he goes down to Hershey, Pennsylvania, and he takes the public tour of the Hershey Chocolate Company. And he's going through learning how they make chocolate, but really what he wanted to do was to have a meeting with the family that was running it at the time for the Hershey family, which was Bruce Murray. And so Forrest, after the tour, went up to him and opened up his hand that had a handkerchief in it. And back then, chocolate, if you had taken it from Chicago, which is where he was, all the way to Hershey, Pennsylvania, it would have been like really melted and gross. He learned a technique while he was in Europe, which used candied chocolates. So women that had white gloves on didn't want to get their hands with chocolate on them. So he created this candied chocolate concept. They decided to partner up and form a new business. And so you had Mars and Murray coming together to create M&Ms. And that's how it started. And of course, it's been one of the most successful companies of all time. And Forrest would later go on to take over the Mars empire. Kind of the idea there is, if you're in a crisis right now as a leader, especially, this is a really good time to innovate.
Mark, welcome to Founders and Empanadas. Thank you so much for coming on today.
Yeah, thanks, Joshua. Got my empanada right here, so I appreciate that.
Amazing. I'm rolling with the palito de queso today. The local store was out of empanadas, but we'll make it work. All right, let's dig in. Cheers.
Awesome. Yeah, appreciate it. Thank you so much. Yeah, looking forward to the conversation.
Awesome. Well, Mark, I'd really love to get a masterclass around all things innovation, and no better person to bring on than you, who just gave a TED Talk last week about innovation. But before we dive into it, I'd love to hear a little bit more about your origin story and how you founded Michigan Labs.
Yeah, so Josh and I co-founded Michigan Labs in 2010, and it was really my wife's idea. She wanted to listen to the radio on her iPhone, and this is back in 2008, 2009. The iPhone had just come out, and she couldn't listen to it, and she was, I think it was a flash-based player or something like that, and so she just put it on my honey-do list, build an app. And it was behind, mow the lawn, clean out the garage and stuff. And I didn't know how to build apps. And so, I was working in business. And so I went to Barnes and Noble and bought the Dummies book for iPhone programming.
Okay.
And came home, read the book, and about 6 months later was able to build an iPhone app for the specific radio station that she wanted to listen to. So you could play, pause, and rewind live radio. And then my business partner, Josh, is also his name. And he was like, hey, I'll build the Android version. And of course, he built it in like a day because he was a professional programmer. And we were able to launch it on the App Store. And we gave them one condition. We said, don't put our names on this. We don't want any credit for this, bug reports, things like that. And that was the one condition they didn't listen to. They put our names in personal cells in the App Store. And they had about 100,000 listeners. So it was a pretty popular station. And after it launched, we started getting calls from all over the place of people that wanted apps. And that's how we started Michigan Software Labs.
I love that. And during the early stages of the company, I'd love to learn a little bit more about the first roles that you hired for, and maybe what are some hiring mistakes that you made early on that you have since course corrected on?
Yeah, I think we started, most of our roles were around builders. And so we were hiring software developers, and we really didn't have a ton of focus on UX or product management, project management until, the later years. So early on, it was just about building and trying to find problems that were worth solving. And a lot of it was early on in mobile. And so we were building a lot of iPhone apps at the time, which was Objective-C. And then Android was still using Java at the time. So we were writing Java quite a bit. And just hiring people that had experience building things and building applications that were really intuitive and were easier to use. A lot of times we'd build the front end, and then, if the enterprise had the back end database, we'd tie into that. And so, really just trying to help solve problems. And you get into some really unique industries, if you start taking anything on. You get to have a lot of fun learning. and along the way. So we learned a ton about all these various industries and did ride-alongs, and we're able to really help support our clients to grow using mobile apps.
I found that in my company too, especially in the early days, we would say yes to pretty much everything, and it's
Yeah.
just such a wide span of businesses from, Silicon Valley tech companies to dance studios in Australia, kind of everything in between. But it's been really interesting to learn so much about the different industries and kind of day to day being able to wear multiple hats going into them. What would you say is like has been the most compelling or interesting, industry that you've they've been driven into during your career?
Oh, wow. Well, I think it's hard to kind of pick favorites. It's like kind of the favorite kid. My wife and I have four daughters, and one of our daughters is having a birthday today, actually. So, super, super grateful for that. But yeah, I think, we've learned so much about different industries. And I think a lot of the lessons we learn, it is where it can be applied across industry. So let's say you take something that you learned in the logistics and supply chain industry and applying it to, maybe a process that could work better in a manufacturing industry. And I think those are some lessons that you can kind of cross apply to, really, create some value. And so we've worked in, probably 10 major industries that are really, popular, but the majority of what we're trying to do is really solve user problems of trying to take, all right, what is outdated about this and this process, and how can we modernize it? And what's nice is that people, being on their smartphones at home, with Instagram and all these different tools and things like that, has really come into the B2B world, and they want their tool, their app, to work in a similar way as to what they have with their consumer app. And so we've seen a lot of demand from that.
Amazing. Yeah, it's B2B apps, unfortunately, are often neglected from a kind of a UX perspective. So I love that you're kind of applying that same design thinking to B2B. Um, Perfect. So, Mark, I'd love to hear kind of an abridged version of your TED Talk that you gave last week, and what were some of the biggest actionable takeaways that the audience got?
Yeah, so I'll share just briefly. It was down in Texas, and we were able to just kind of help people to really get their minds thinking more about innovation. And so I shared that innovation comes out of crisis, and it comes out of uncertainty, and it takes courage. And so those were kind of the three main points. And then I offered an exercise and, kind of some homework for people to take away with that. And really the goal is to help them innovate, whether they're at a, large business or they're just trying to make better decisions at home. And so really coming alongside them, giving them some proven techniques that we found work really well when you're starting off and innovating. And so, I also like stories. So I use the story of Forrest Mars. I don't know if you're familiar with this story, but back in the 1930s, Forrest Mars was the heir of the Mars Chocolate Company, and his father had, kind of just kicked him out, and so he had to leave the company. They did not get along so well, and so he's out of a job. He's pretty young, and he's very innovative. I mean, he's trying to figure out, what can I do to, kind of get back on my feet. And so he goes down to Hershey, Pennsylvania, and he takes the public tour of the Hershey Chocolate Company. And so he's going along through this public tour, and of course they have no idea who he is. And he's going through learning how they make chocolate. But really what he wanted to do was to have a meeting with the family that was running it at the time, for the Hershey family, which was Bruce Murray. And Bruce Murray was basically running things, had a key contract with the Army. And so Forrest, after the tour, went up to him and opened up his hand that had a handkerchief in it. And back then, chocolate, if you had taken it from Chicago, which is where he was, all the way to Hershey, Pennsylvania, it would have been like really melted and gross. And he learned a technique while he was in Europe, which used candied chocolates. And so women didn't want that had white gloves on, didn't want to get their hands with chocolate on them. So he created this candied chocolate concept. And so they decided to partner up and form a new business. And so you had Mars and Murray coming together to create M&Ms. And that's how it started. And of course, it's been one of the most successful companies of all time. And Forrest would later go on to take over the Mars empire. So pretty story, but kind of the idea there is if you're in a crisis right now as a leader, especially, this is a really good time to innovate. And so, sharing that, a lot of leaders right now they're uncertain. In fact, the World Uncertainty Index has ranked this as one of the highest points in history for uncertainty, other than 2008. That was the only time it was this high. It's even less than what COVID was in terms of the uncertainty index. So there's a lot of fear. There's a lot of uncertainty right now. And that's where a lot of these good ideas are going to come from. A lot of innovation is going to happen.
I forgot where the graph was where I saw it, but how most unicorns come out of periods of high uncertainty. And we're seeing it even right now with all of the latest batch of Y Combinator companies that are all tied to AI, and the interesting next few years. It's an interesting story on Mars that you brought up. And my exposure to them is that actually my cousin's company in the pet space was acquired by Mars, and
Oh, cool.
they're able to diversify from chocolates to pet foods and pet tech eventually. Pretty wide breadth that they're covering now. But yeah, I never knew the M&M reference. It's a good story.
Yeah, Mars and Murray. So now every time you eat M&Ms, you're going to think about that.
And the candied chocolates for my wet gloves. I need the candied empanada for my.
Yeah. Yeah. Mine's sitting over there looking at me. It's ready to be eaten.
Yeah, you want to take a bite? Let's get in.
Yeah, you got to dive in here. So there we go.
What flavor did you get?
I think I went with the beef queso.
Okay. Muy bien.
So very good.
Awesome. And Mark, I'm interested in learning a little bit more about applying innovation to the household. Whenever I think of that buzzword, I always apply it to the workplace setting. But what are some actionable tips that you gave to the TED Talk audience about applying it to just personal life?
Yeah, so I kind of came up with this concept, and I read a stat that the average American, I think this is Gen Z, but spends 40 hours a week on their phone and just watching media. And so you think of TikTok, you think of Reels, whatever. They're just really wasting time, watching videos. And so I shared that, kind of my encouragement to that generation, or even to us, leaders, is to spend a day without your phone. And so to try and start that day, take a blank sheet of paper, write down your biggest problem that you're trying to solve at the top of the page, and then be able to just list ideas. And if you can spend time outside in nature, that would be ideal. But really just trying to unlock your brain. It's like, when we lay down to sleep, our ideas start flowing because we're not being distracted by our phones. And so just having that unlock really happen. And I drew a couple charts that, I don't know, let's see if we can draw these here. I guess if we can eat empanadas, we can draw. But the idea is you're going to want to take that paper and show it to someone that, might be a friend, someone that you trust that can really help, kind of take you through it and really pick, one of those ideas that you listed and help you prioritize it. And so, as leaders, I guess, as we're, thinking about it, sometimes as we're innovating, it kind of feels like this. We get like this uncertainty here where we're not really able to make sense of what's happening. I guess I should use a darker marker. But the idea that when we're innovating, we're kind of listing on all those ideas, it feels like this. Mm-hmm. And it's just really chaotic. But if we change our perspective, and if we have a friend look at it, it's going to have a lot more order, and it's going to be, the same issue, but just seen from a different perspective. And so if we're able to really take that into account, we'll be able to, have a better result. And so, I'm a student of a lot of these techniques, and I read a lot of books on innovation, ideation. One that I just read that I got back from South by Southwest was called Idea Flow. And it's talking about this concept of like, all right, well, how do we, get better at coming up with new ideas? And they were talking about this equation, which I shared in the TED Talk. But, if you can take the number of ideas over time, you're going to be able to increase your idea flow. And so for leaders, if they're able to just practice writing down more and more ideas with less, in less time, they're going to be able to have increased idea flow. And that's what people are, really, those people that are following the leader, they want them to increase their idea flow. They don't want them to just be stagnant, especially right now where we have such uncertainty. They don't want their leader to be like, oh yeah, I'm going to do things the same way no matter what, that I used to do 10 years ago and now it's not working anymore. And so trying to help people think through that and really shift their behavior. And I told the story of Apollo 13, how, these astronauts, when they were facing this crisis, they had to throw out the instruction manual. And sometimes as leaders, we have to throw that out. It's not working anymore. What we did, what we wrote down, what we thought was going to work isn't going to work anymore. And so they were able to take filters and, all these cobbled together pieces and even duct tape and create a solution that worked for them to save their lives. And so right now, we're often asked to do the same thing as leaders. And so we've got to try and find the ingredients that we can put together and try and create an innovation that'll help save a lot of people.
I love that. And Mark, I find the best companies are the ones that are able to generate that idea flow from throughout the entire organization. So how do you empower innovation and teammates even in entry level roles to kind of speak up and share ideas and help impact the company as a whole at Michigan Labs?
Yeah, I think if you can reduce or even remove the judgment, you're going to get a lot more ideas and you're going to get better ideas. So I think, Google, used to do their innovation day. They would take Friday afternoon. And I think they would, say, hey, this is your time, innovate. And that's where Gmail came from and a couple of their large Google products. And so if you can reduce, the judgment, even for a short period of time and say all ideas are on the table, and especially right now where there is so much uncertainty, like this is a perfect time to be, to do that. And then to have, people, a lot of times people bring us into those conversations and say, hey, can you run a workshop? Can you, get the sticky notes going, whether it's virtual or it's in person, but saying, let's put everything on the table. Let's try and think through this together and try and find some problems that are worth solving. And so, for us, we might do a business model canvas, really understanding, all right, this is how this is going to shape up and actually create value for the organization. Or sometimes it's just a SWOT analysis, where we're looking at strengths and weaknesses, opportunities and threats and saying, all right, this is a model that has worked for people. How can we follow this model to really see, where the value is hiding?
Love that. And Mark, for the engineers on your team, how do you really empower them and encourage them to think like product builders rather than just task executors and clicking off the next Jira ticket?
Yeah, I think what I love about our team is that they really understand, that it is so much more than just the code, and they want to understand the user. They want to understand the problem that's trying to be solved, really these business outcomes that they're trying to figure out, because they're navigating some pretty big complexity, and so they really like that. And that's why we're kind of all together here in the same offices, so that way we can collaborate together and try and solve problems together. And so we get brought in, and these are some big problems. Like, you're not just like, oh yeah, this is how we've solved this, and so we're going to do that. Just build an app, build an agent, or whatever it is. No, these are very complex, and you're like, yeah, this is. Let me get back to you. Let's try and work this out together. Let's try and take our expertise, combine it with the industry experts, and see what we can come up with. And yeah, it's kind of that idea of, I think there's a book I have, The Unicorn Within, but it's that idea that, in some of these large enterprises, especially Fortune 1000 right now, there are a lot of really good ideas, and there's some really innovative people that they want to take action. They want to build something, and this is really the time to do it. So just kind of encouraging them to start building and to start creating that value that they know their organization is going to need.
I love that. And I'm curious just to learn a little bit more about the inner workings of Michigan Labs and how do you approach ensuring that members of your team have accountability without creating kind of a surveillance culture at your company?
Yeah, I think that we have really good people leaders and people that care about the person behind the product that's being built, and have a really good relationship to where they're able to provide encouragement and instruction. And you'll do a retrospective and you'll say, oh, these are the things that went really well. These are the things that we can improve, and you're kind of looking back, and each sprint is maybe getting incrementally better. And so you're able to look back at trying to, reduce some inefficiency and trying to create better quality, better outcomes for the client. So that's really where we try and focus on.
And I'd love to dive into AI. So, one of my recent Empanadas podcast guests was explaining how, we went to a panel recently and, the panel guests were all saying, how long do you think it would take to rebuild DocuSign's product?
Mm.
E-signature in 2025 with AI agents. And the kind of panel range from, just 2 developers to 5 developers required over a few month period. But all to say is, dramatic decrease in team size is likely the trend we're going to continue to be seeing in the software development space. So I'd love to hear, how is kind of Michigan Labs embracing AI? What are some initiatives your team is working on?
Yeah, I mean, certainly we're getting a lot of our demand is in that area, and so trying to figure out how they can leverage it really as a tool and try and help to combine it. But I think we actually just had a lunch and learn today where one of our team members presented on this and said, what it's solving is a big part of it, but is it the whole thing, or is it just one piece of the equation? And so I think it kind of comes back to this workflow and this roadmap of where it's going to just be a piece of it. You're still going to need some sort of front end that the user is going to use, at least for now. Eventually, once agents are just hitting the database back and forth, then maybe not. But right now, yeah, you need users to be able to interact with that data somehow, and be able to have a human in the loop making decisions and creating them as part of that. So I think the trend will continue with that. We're hearing more and more they want senior team members. They want people that have done this before. And so that's where we're kind of seeing a lot of demand in terms of our team is being brought in, because we are experts and we've built, really big, complex digital products, and with AI being just a part of it. So I know it sounds really, like, wow, everything is only about that. And I was on the NVIDIA, talk today or whatever, as they were talking back and forth, and more about the hardware changes and even the software changes. But I think it's really about figuring out, where does this fit into their ecosystem? Where are they trying to leverage it as a tool, and how can they make better decisions with the data? Getting better data in is certainly going to help. But then what parts, do need to be automated, and that are really, the first ones that they could start tackling to create value.
And what would you say have been the best companies that have made AI not just a add-on feature, but really core to their product? Can you share any examples of, companies that you think you've been really successful with that rollout?
Yeah, a lot of the examples that we're seeing right now are where they have really good data, and so they're able to say, we already have all this, these workflows and infrastructure to be able to get the data in the right place, and then we're able to help them, deploy in a headless way the right models that can connect it to add value to the users. And so I think we use the 10-20-70 approach, if you've heard of this, where 10% is selecting the right model, 20% might be the front end technology, how users are going to use it, and then 70% is really the change management and getting people to do kind of because it's who moved my cheese, where does this belong now, how can I use this tool that I've been using for the last 15 years, and where's my button? And so it's change management. It's really helping leaders and organizations try and filter through that and make sure it's going to work, because you can create all the fanciest, best, buzziest technology and AI and all this, and not have it really move the needle, because it's not being fed either the right data, or the users aren't able to do what they need to do in it.
Yep, absolutely. And I'm curious, Mark, just with your business model and kind of doing staffing and project-based work, how do you foresee AI impacting the future of Michigan Labs? And do you foresee it replacing a lot of software development jobs, or creating even more opportunities for your team? Kind of where's your headspace at there?
Yeah, I've gone back to this idea that I think, at least in the short term, the demand will still be needed, where you're going to have a software developer or human in the loop, someone that's able to maintain what you're trying to build and make sure that, especially if you're extracting a lot of value from the tool, that it's built in the right way, it's pointed at the right things. And so, yeah, that's where, our focus would be, is really on, all right, problem identification, and then, building the right solution. And most of the time that will involve some sort of AI, and then, yeah, rolling it out from there. So our goal right now is to reduce a little bit of the intimidation factor. I think enterprise leaders are coming and saying, whoa, this is like, everything has to have some sort of, AI. And we can kind of see through that a little bit and say, all right, let's just reduce the intimidation factor. Like, here's what we're talking about. You know your industry really well. And let's have a conversation. Let's try and figure out where this fits, where it doesn't fit. Build a roadmap, something that you can safely go back to your board or your executive team with and say, yep, here's where we are in the roadmap. Here's where we're going to go. It's kind of that crawl, walk, run approach, where we're not going to try and boil the ocean and disrupt every, thing that we've grown and built for so long. And we think that that's really the best approach.
And I'm curious, how have you been able to navigate, executives of clients that you work with that are just see AI and kind of want it no matter what, and how have you been able to kind of work with these different stakeholders to ensure that the solution that they're looking for isn't, you're not kind of over engineering for it by just putting in AI for the sake of it. Any kind of stories you can share along those lines?
Well, I think at the end of the day, they know how good their data is, and so they kind of know a little bit what they're capable of. And a lot of them we've been working together for a long time now too, so we can help them, navigate some of those discussions, and yeah, really helping them see where they want to go. But I still come back to this idea of, I want them to build, I want them to be innovating right now, because this is the number one time to do it. And if you think back to that uncertainty, index and that uncertainty curve, like this is where the best ideas are going to kind of come out of, and it might be messy, and it might be, not immediate success, but it could be, yeah, really good for their business as they grow.
I love that. Well, Mark, I want to take another quick empanada
Oh
intermission.
yeah, grab my bite.
Muy bien. And I'd love to take a quick pause and dive a little bit deeper into just founder mental health. That's a big topic on our show, and I'd love to hear a little bit more about what it's like running an engineering agency, and maybe what's something that nobody warned you about starting the agency setup.
Yeah, I think the we just joined the Koya program, COYA, and it's a group. It's really, I first heard about it more on the fitness end, but it's an app that allows you to really track a lot of your, habits, mostly sleep and hydration, and, trying to make better decisions to get better outcomes. And so it's more looking at well-being, and you get really 3 months of, kind of this program, and you get partnered with these different leaders in the space. And so, like, the best person on, nutrition, the best person on, sleep, and you start to learn a lot. And then you're also tracking all your, daily habits and things like that. And so some of it is like, you're going to control the controllables and what you can actually control. And then those other things you're not going to have to worry about as much. And so I think that that's been a big approach. But yeah, certainly there's a lot of stress in our industry, and there's a lot that is at stake. And so really helping, trying to focus on serving others. Like I was talking about that chart before, if you have, high concern for others, along with uncertainty, you're actually going to have some innovation. And so staying really focused on serving, and yeah, trying to build it like we'd want it built for us is one of our core values.
I'm curious, just by the fact that you're in the agency model, has it ever felt like you've been forced into being a middleman rather than an innovator? And how do you fight against that with clients that maybe have their clear vision and just want you to execute?
Yeah, I mean, we get ideas on napkins, or we get, screenshots of whiteboards and things like that. And they just want it built a certain way. And then as we unpack it a little bit more, it's really, they do want our expertise, and they want us to make sure that we're offering those opinions, because we've seen this a time or two, built hundreds of products. And so we want to be able to apply that expertise to what they are going through, and really come alongside them. If they look good in the organization, we're able to really help them. Somebody asked me the other day, are most of your new projects coming out of IT? Or are they coming from the business? And it's really a combination. We want IT to look good as well. And we want them to be able to, be seen, because they're overtasked right now, and they've got a lot internally that they're being relied on in the business. And so sometimes they get too busy. And so they do need to, have somebody come with an outside perspective and still integrate with them and make them look good. And so that's where we try and really work hard at Michigan Labs to help make sure that we're serving them well and making them look good.
And Mark, curious also, if you could share a story on maybe what's the hardest conversation you've had with a client, and how did you handle it?
I mean, I think when you're supporting clients, you're getting brought into not just their professional life, but their personal life, and how they're trying to move things forward in both areas. And so coming alongside them, sometimes you're a coach, sometimes you're a counselor, sometimes you're just a friend to have them share with. But they've got incredible demands on their time and what they're trying to do. And so being that listening ear, trying to help them really understand a different way, a different framework. Leaders we work with, they love frameworks. They love simple things that are digestible and can help them kind of think through a problem differently. And that's what we've often found, recommending books, resources, articles, things like that. Hey, this article made me think of you. And we also write a lot for Forbes and for Fast Company. And so getting that thought leadership out there and really helping kind of move it forward. I just wrote one on kind of what the middle market is facing right now. And so middle market leaders are really coming, and they're trying to figure out what to do, especially with AI. And so wrote that Forbes article really just with them in mind.
Have you found that that's been just like those thought leadership pieces have been a great lead gen source for your agency as well, and kind of getting Michigan Labs' branding out there?
Yeah. I think Forbes is a good brand, and but more so if one person reads it and one person gets help, then I feel like I was able to do the purpose of that and try and get them connected. So that's been a really good exercise. And I just like writing. Oftentimes I'll write on the plane or whatever. I'll write kind of more just by hand and kind of sketch things out, and then I put it into a more formal document. And then of course Forbes editing team is awesome. Fast Company editing team is awesome. When I first started working with them, I would have like 14 that's, because I say that a lot. And so they would just pull that out. But using new technology, we use Whisper Flow quite a bit too, if you've heard of that tool. Rather than actually having to type, you can just speak and it'll put it into like a typed way. It's just an app you can have it on your Mac. I think it's for PC as well, but it's basically spelled whisper, but without the vowels. So WISPR Flow. And that's been a really good tool for me. Just helps me write faster.
Amazing. And last question I have for you is, has there been any kind of inherent loneliness with running an agency versus actually just developing your own product?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's great. I'm a co-founder, and Josh is our managing partner. And so really, being in it together and being able to, kind of encourage each other, confide in each other to, help. It is definitely lonely, wherever you are in an organization right now. And so I think getting through what we got through with, you start a business in 2008, 2009, that's kind of like the worst time to start from a lot of people, and then going through COVID. And we've been through a lot together, and certainly are trying to be an encouragement to each other, which has been really good.
Have you or your co-founder ever been in a place where you thought about shutting everything down? And if so, like what pulled you out of it?
I think just, being able to innovate, and we're still helping people. And so that's been really encouraging, is like, all right, we're still having good outcomes that people are finding value in. And still getting invited to speak on events and podcasts and things like that. It's been really good.
Amazing. Mark, would you be open to sharing maybe your worst burnout moment you've ever had, and maybe what did it take to recover from it?
Yeah, I think the point when we were in the middle of COVID and just kind of having, more of a social person. And so having to start to journal and to share a little bit more about that experience. And, for me, kind of, coming out of that, you're like, wow, we were in the process too of building this office, by the way. A little insult to injury, but not kicking off a large building project in the middle of COVID. And so, yeah, there was a ton of stress kind of on us, and what should we do? And so, yeah, seeking guidance from our mentors and people that could come alongside us and share, here's what they, faced in their career. Here's what they decided to do. And that gave us a lot of comfort. And yeah, that's been a good part.
At what point did you decide to stick through with the build instead of just cutting it out and staying remote?
We knew that we wanted to be in person. So, yeah, I think it wasn't long after that where we got everything going here.
Amazing. And Mark, I love to ask this to all of our guests. But what's one strongly held belief that you have that you think 90% of other founders would disagree with?
I'm pretty pro LinkedIn, and a lot of founders hate LinkedIn because it is kind of a necessary evil, but I really do like the community there and the ability to, yeah, it's how, people might find out about Michigan Labs. And so, creating content on there, it's a lot of work, but it will, yeah, be worthwhile and just helping you get your name out there. So, yeah, I would say that's probably a belief that I have, that I might be pretty resistant to change. And I'm still trying to create content, write comments, and send voice memos, and just share with people what I'm learning. And hopefully it's helpful to them.
I emphatically agree with that. LinkedIn has been great for my business as well, and the community is certainly a lot stronger there than other platforms like Twitter. So, well, amazing, Mark. And do you have any books around software development or building agencies that have been impactful that you might recommend with our listeners?
Yeah, I think a lot of what reading, let me grab something here, but certainly as you're thinking about innovation, you can, grab books like Switch. I think that's a good resource for people. I do like The Vision Driven Leader by Hyatt. If you've read that one, that's been a really good one. And then the one that I mentioned earlier was called Idea Flow. And so check that one out. It just came out. And so I think you can get it on Audible, or you can get it on Amazon. But that's been a really good resource just as you're thinking about ideation and how to create more ideas.
Amazing. Well, Mark, where can our listeners find out more about you and Michigan Labs online?
Yeah, you can find us at michiganlabs.com. And you can also check us out on LinkedIn under Mark Johnson or Michigan Software Labs.
Amazing. Well, Mark, thank you so much for coming on and sharing some empanadas with me. And congratulations on all of your growth. And excited to continue keeping tabs in on the Michigan Labs journey and where you go to next.
Great. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much. Cheers.